This is Feminist Wellness, and I'm your host, nurse practitioner, functional medicine expert, and life coach, Victoria Albina. I'll show you how to get unstuck, drop the anxiety, perfectionism, and codependency so you can live from your beautiful heart. Welcome, my love. Let's get started. Hello, my love. I hope this finds you doing so well. Leo season is soon upon us. I felt compelled to say that because I am very much a Leo, as you've heard me say 4,000 times, as a Leo is wont to say 4,000 times. And I just love Leo season. I was making the music. I do breathwork with the folks in Anchored every month and with the alumni. And I make these playlists that are a pride and joy for me. It's so much fun. And I was making a very raucous and exciting one for Leo season for August because duh, right? It's what the season calls for. I'm so excited that I'm having some of my nearest and dearest over for my birthday soon. And then my partner and I are going camping up in Ithaca, New York, which is going to be so beautiful. I've never been there and I'm excited. So I love to bring the things that come up in Anchored to the podcast because they're the things that are up for all of you who are listening, right? Recently, we were talking about a term that has become quite the buzzword these days, which is resistance. It was many moons ago when I was doing my breathwork facilitator training that I first encountered that term. If someone couldn't drop into the meditation, if someone couldn't get present and stay with the breathwork, they were told they were having resistance, or a lot more yikes, being resistant. And that they just had to work harder to drop in. They had to overcome it. They had to push through. The folks at Anchored bring this up all the time when we're working with our inner children, our protector parts, or are doing somatic or body-based practices. Early on in our time together, this kind of language doesn't last long, don't worry. I hear them say things like, I'm feeling stuck. I have resistance to going there, but I can force myself to go there. And they say it with this energy. And of course, I'm never judging. We've been taught to think this way, right? So this energy that says that resistance is something to beat, a problem to muscle through and get to the other side of with the brute force of will. And I find that whole framework for looking at and working with resistance to be problematic, to say the least, from a nervous system standpoint. And I think it's just not loving, compassionate, curious, or kind to treat that energy within us like it's a problem. Because it's not. I think of resistance as the voice of self-love, letting you know that in this moment, you are not currently resourced enough in your nervous system, which we talked about in episodes 135 and 174, being resourced in your nervous system, meaning that you can support your nervous system with love and care to come back to the calm, centered, safe, social place that is ventral vagal from sympathetic activation, which is the adrenaline, fight or flight, freak out stage, or dorsal, which is the checked out, disconnected stage. So yeah, our resistance is that voice inside that says, babe, my love, you are not currently resourced enough, connected with your resources enough to look at or work with the issue at hand. So today I will posit that feeling of resistance is a kind, caring energy within you that alerts you to what your body perceives as dangerous. And that's a gift. It's a gift to know and learn what your body thinks is dangerous so that you can work with it in a different way. It's a little internal red flag that says, my darling tender ravioli, that is me. It's best not to go to there alone and in the dark. So, my darling, of course, your body is offering you the gift of resistance when you're attempting to go to a place or to look at a part of your psyche that's been hidden away from you for very good inner child or nervous system reasons. Of course, your body is resisting starting that new movement practice or way of eating or way of calendaring or whatever other behavior that a part of you is linking with certain doom, Because your amygdala, the old fear center in the limbic system, which we talked about in episode 153, Inner Child Science, is getting activated by that thing. And it's getting activated by the thing and is sounding all the alarm bells in your body that say, do not go to there, because that's its job. Its one and only job is to resist or to block things that might make you die. And granted, its understanding of what might make you die is quite different from what your adult brain, what your super smart cognitive capacity is telling you, but that's so not the point. Your sweet little amygdala thinks this thing is scary. And so that is why a shift in how we talk about and think about resistance is what is called for. My little tiger tail, does it feel kind to you to try to push, shove, or beat that energy which seeks only to protect you? My beloved tenderoni, I think not. And if you've ever tried to push through and your body says no, how has that worked out for you? I must say it never worked out well for me, because I would either just get all up in my head during meditation, breathwork, somatics, or a challenging conversation, beating myself up for not being able to go to a place my body doesn't want me to go to. And mostly I would beat myself up because I didn't realize that's what was happening. I bought it hook, line, and sinker that I was being resistant. So of course I beat me up. Just the other day in Anchored, someone said, I get so frustrated when resistance shows up because I just want to do the work already. I want to get better, and I'm mad that it gets in my way. Now, I get that. I hear that. That's understandable. But pushing away our body signals, symptoms, messages, just because we don't like them or don't want them to be happening, also doesn't tend to work out very well for us. Again, it never worked out too well for me in my once seemingly endless irritable bowel syndrome journey. I would negate my symptoms, try to just ignore them into not being there. And that never did me any kind of good. The other thing that happens when we try to push through resistance is that we collapse towards dorsal, which is the freeze or disconnection part of the nervous system, and we go blank because we're supposed to, because science. This used to happen to me, for me, really, in challenging conversations with an old partner who often triggered or activated my nervous system with things like a loud voice or yelling. I would feel super activated. I would go blank. And then I would try to push through in these talks and would lose all connection with myself. I would lose my words, which, if you know me, is a surprising thing indeed, because this little Argentine Leo is a serious chatterbox. And the pushing energy I had with myself to try to people please my then partner would lead me into a blanked out, shut down kind of place that felt truly terrible. I don't recommend it. What about when you're resisting doing the thing that you know is best for you? Well, I would offer that perhaps subconsciously it's scary. Perhaps just because it's new, perhaps because you don't know who you'll be on the other side of it, perhaps because you're scared of failure from a perfectionist mindset, or perhaps because someone else might not like it, might be upset by it, might not agree, might be displeased. All those people-pleasing codependent thoughts were such a part of my internal landscape for so long, and for not a moment did they serve me in the long run. Though it sure did keep me feeling falsely safe for a hot minute, while simultaneously keeping me feeling stuck and trapped and like I was doomed to stay in relationships, friendships, jobs, apartments that felt bad, that didn't serve me. Because my habitual mindset was one in which discomfort was comfortable. And because I didn't know how to meet that resistance with anything other than being annoyed and grumped at and by it, I sure did stick around. And therein lies the problem. When we get mad at this internal resistance, when we think it's a problem, we get mad at ourselves. Because often, we don't think of the resistance as a part of us. It's almost like it's this disembodied energy within us. And because we forget that resistance is a once brilliant and amazing survival skill, which we talked about 1,000 years ago in episode 19 on adaptive and maladaptive behaviors. In that grumbling state, we don't even realize it, but we unwittingly take ourselves out of what is most needed in these moments. The most vital remedy of all, being present in our lives, in our bodies. And instead we get all up in our heads, thinking about the resistance we're experiencing, making plans, applying our smarts to what is truly a somatic or bodily experience. And we thus try to mind muscle our way through instead of being with it, which is what that resistance most needs. Finally, there's another kind of resistance that we love to roll around in from our codependent thought habits. And there's so much more to this, so I'll explore it in depth in another episode. But for today, I want to say that it's super common for us to resist reality, often from our perfectionism. And this too has less than optimal outcomes for us. I was recently coaching a member of the Anchored Familia on her chronic migraines. She shared that when she feels one coming on, she immediately goes to annoyance, frustration, anger that she's getting a headache in the first place, which quickly turns into anger at herself, her body, her headache, her healthcare providers. And when the action she's taking in the think, feel, act cycle is to resist that she's having the migraine, then she doesn't do anything about it until it's bad. And this happens for all of us. We resist reality. We resist the facts of the matter. We resist accepting what's true in our relationships, friendships, at work, from this fantasy story that it will eventually get better if we just work harder or push ourselves more or do more or fix other people's lives more. And so we end up resisting making change in our own lives, due in part to resisting what's real just because we don't like it. And I gotta just say, if only that worked to fix our problems. But alas, herein, what you resist persists indeed. So my loves, it's your favorite time of the show. Remedy time. I don't know why that made me giggle, but God, I just love to giggle. It just feels so good in my entire body. So today, I'm going to be offering 5 steps to lovingly support ourselves in the presence of resistance so that it can start to begin to feel, and did you see how much space I gave you there to be in process? It can start to begin to feel like a supportive gift and not something to be pissed off at all. Doesn't that sound lovely? I think it's really lovely indeed, because resistance is not a promise, it's a gift. And I will pinky promise on that. So let's get to the remedies. I'll describe each generally, and then I'll talk all about the more specific how-tos next week. And I'm doing that because I love you and I love your nervous system. And giving you all of this plus step by step, do this, do that, do the other, this is too much. It's too much for one nervous system, so we're not going to do it. All right. So, step 1, resource your nervous system. We talked about this in episodes 135, 172, and 174. My program is called Anchored because connecting in with our nervous system allows us to anchor ourselves to the shore so we can go swimming out into the dark and stormy waters knowing we are tethered to safety. In Anchored, we anchor ourselves in our own hearts, in our own sense of self. We have our own backs, and we anchor ourselves in ventral vagal. So please, my tender, tender, tender little buttercup, please do not start to engage with resistance until you take a moment to truly anchor yourself in a nervous system resource. And we do this before we step into awareness around our felt sensation, before we start doing exercises like body scans and exploring our bodies to support ourselves in getting in contact with resistance. And while I'm on the subject of body scans, if you head over to victoriaalbina.com, right at the top of the page, there's a teal bar. Click it. It says free meditations, and that will take you to a place where you can put your name and email in, and you can get a set of free body scans from moi for free, because I love you. Okay, so step 1, connect in with those nervous system resources, get really anchored there. Step 2. In shocking news to longtime listeners, next, we will lovingly witness ourselves and our resistant parts, bringing our awareness to the part of us that says, absolutely not. Thou shalt not do the thing you said you want to do because I, almighty resistance, forbid it. In so doing, we raise our awareness of our bodily or felt connection with our inner resistance. Your job is just to get present to it. That's all. Where does it live? What's going on there? Get present. Step 3. Then we remind ourselves that at first, we are not trying to shift the story or the thought in our minds and bodies. That's right. I'm saying step away from that T-line, my thought workers. Step away. Because first, we need to shift our relationship to the resistance by deciding that we are here not to change or beat the resistance. We are here to befriend it, to make nice, to be pals, to honor it, to speak to it kindly. And in so doing, to show it the respect it most truly deserves, because it is, after all, your co-conspirator in keeping your inner children safe. Because when we meet resistance with more resistance, then we find ourselves befuddled that it sticks around, but of course it does. Which, again, brings to mind that old adage, what you resist persists. So we stop resisting resistance and start to befriend it. And I'll expand this, sort of zoom out to say, whatever you're applying thought work to, whatever you're thought working on, I don't ever advise trying to change a thought when you're hating that thought or are annoyed by it. Because your nervous system will say no, and it will often say it quite loudly in order to get your attention. When you speak to yourself with a grumped feeling, you get a grumped feeling or collapse back. You don't move yourself into that ventral vagal nervous system state where you feel safe and connected. And being there, being anchored in ventral vagal is important to be able to meet resistance lovingly. When we unwittingly deny, negate, or turn away from that resistant voice, when we tell it, you're not wanted, you're a bad part, you're not loved, my darling, we tell that part that it just doesn't belong. And I don't ever want to do that to any part of myself. Around here in Anchored, we meet all of our parts, even the parts we don't love, with love and care. Because as long as they feel othered, smothered, and shunned, exiled from your consciousness, they will get louder and more intense, like a little kid pulling on your pants saying, excuse me, excuse me, excuse me. They are just going to get louder until they get your attention. And in so doing, they will continue to take you out of your bodily experience and into their cozy place, which is the mind. And so you'll continue to live your life and these important moments from the neck up, instead of meeting them with embodiment and presence, which for me is the goal of all this healing work. That and more giggling. Joking, but I'm not at all joking. Like, what else are we healing for if not more love and joy and fun and pleasure and giggles? But I digress. But what's new? So, meet the thought with love. Meet the energy with love. Don't try to change it until you change your relationship to it. Step 4. Remember that this voice or energy is just a part of you. It's not the whole of you, right? And so pay attention to your language. We say things like, I am resisting. And in that, instead of remembering that we're all just temporarily experience resistance from a part of ourselves, we make it mean that all of us, right? That the whole of who you are is full up with resistance. But that couldn't possibly be true. Clearly, not all of you is resisting, or you never would have decided to take on this new habit, this new way of showing up. You never would have walked into that breathwork or somatic session. You would never have chosen to do the thing at all if all of you was resisting. So my darling, there's no need for all or nothing black and white thinking here, which we talked about in episodes 146 and 147. And I will invite you to step into the nuance. because reminding ourselves that this is just one part of us allows us to begin to disidentify with it, which is a super vital step. Because as long as you're thinking, I am resisting, then that is the action you're taking. And it becomes all consuming. And when you step out of believing that this is a truth, then you can start to connect with that part of you that does want to do whatever it is you want to do, and can bring that part into your conscious awareness more. Can turn up the proverbial volume on those thoughts instead of letting the resistance part just run the show unchecked. The fifth and final step is to engage your neuroplasticity. And that term means our brain's capacity to think and believe new thoughts, right? We just believe our old thoughts because we've heard them time and time and time again. And so they create a neural groove in our brain, the thought path of least resistance. Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. So we want to shift that pathway. And we do that by rinsing and repeating. That is to say, we don't change our relationship to or experience of a thought or sensation by working with it once. We engage our brain's amazing plasticity or ability to think new thoughts and experience new feelings by coming back to it frequently. So I highly recommend setting a timer on your phone or having a little alarm pop up on your computer or whatever that reminds you to honor your resistance, right? To perhaps think of the moment. Let's say this happens all the time in breath work or when you're doing thought work. You can't think of the new thought. Your brain just goes, I don't know, right? Or when you're in conflict, your brain checks out. Whatever it is for you, you could set a little timer once a day to go through these steps, right? To think of that moment. Actually, I would resource first, think of the moment, resource again, right? That's pendulation. We talked about that in the episode about taking care of ourselves during tragedy, which was 172. That was a really good one. I loved that episode. Hated the tragedy, loved the episode. So resource, think of the situation, resource again, and then walk through these steps, right? And this can take a minute, maybe two. I love to tie new habits to the old ones. So this could be your new toothbrushing habit. I've talked here about pee break meditation before, which is, I'm a pint-sized mammal in the height department, and I drink an awful lot of water, and I pee all the time. So I love to link things to peeing, like leaving my phone in the other room. I see you with your phone in the bathroom. It's a little gross, let's be real. And instead, while I'm peeing, taking a slow, deep breath and connecting inward. So maybe while you're peeing, brushing your teeth, putting on your socks, whatever it is that you do each and every day, engage your neuroplasticity and walk through these 5 steps. I guess you'd only need to walk through the first 4 because you're doing the 5th. But really, when you're working with an old neural groove and something that's somatically quite entrenched, it's not one and done. You got to come back and come back and come back to it. And that's really the way that we make progress. Okay, my darlings, this alone is a huge shift for a lot of us. So I'm going to pause here for today as promised so this can soak in, so you can start to integrate these conceptual changes in how we think about and relate to the experience of resistance. Next week, I'll be back to get into the nitty-gritty, step-by-step how-to. Before we do what we do, I want to remind you that registration for the anchored cohort starting 8/8, which is the Lion's Gate in astrology, a most auspicious date indeed, is coming to a quick close. The group is pretty much almost full. So if you love what you're learning on the podcast and want my coaching and somatic guidance to help you take these lessons and make them a part of your lived experience, to apply what you're learning here to change your life for the long haul, you're not going to want to miss this chance to join us for Anchored, my 6-month, small, intimate, loving group program where we bring in somatics, thought work, breath work, and we combine it all together as a way to step into ever deeper self-love, self-worth, and self-care in a real and powerful way. You're not going to want to miss it. So learn more and apply now at victoriaalbina.com/anchored. All right, my beauties, let's do what we do. gentle hand on your heart should you feel so moved. And remember, you are safe, you are held, you are loved. And when one of us heals, we help heal the world. Be well, my beauty. I'll talk to you soon. If you've been enjoying the show and learning a ton, it's time to apply it with my expert guidance so you can live life with intention without the anxiety, overwhelm, and resentment so you can get unstuck. You're not going to want to miss the opportunity to join my exclusive intimate group coaching program. So head on over to victoriaalbina.com/masterclass to grab your seat now. See you there. It's going to be a good one.